Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate all of you being here today. On Tuesday, we heard from the top executives of SVB and Signature Bank, and unfortunately, it was disheartening to hear the lack of responsibility taken from these individuals regarding the decisions they made that put their financial institutions, their depositors, their broader banking sector across the nation in a position of unfathomable risk. I have significant concerns around their actions, but today we are here to talk about yours. I was disappointed when I read the report, Mr. Barr, the Barr report that you put out, because in my opinion, in reading that, you didn't take adequate responsibility for what I believe is under your purview. You know, I read and saw where there was blame placed on the San Francisco Fed, where there was blame placed on your examiners, blame on your predecessors, blame on 2155, but I didn't hear the blame being put on yourself. That's the one entity or person that I didn't see in the report. I will say I really appreciate your candor today and saying that the buck stops with you. I believe that you have to take some personal responsibility for what you've done, and I appreciate you doing that today. I will say, Mr. Barr, on the day that SVB failed, how long had you been in your current role?
I joined in middle of July of 2022.
Okay, so about 10 months? Maybe?
I haven't done the math. It
Okay.
sounds like 7 months.
Okay, 7 months, 10 months to today. That makes sense. So in that short time, the ranking member mentioned this. Obviously, Mr. Vance, Senator Vance mentioned this as well, but you spent considerable time, speeches and other things, talking about climate issues and a number of those remarks. And what I fear is that we're seeing a shift of priority, a shift where someone like you, who, as I looked on your website, it says that your job is to promote the safety and soundness of the banking system, to foster stability in the financial markets, and ensure individual banks are complying with laws and regulation under its jurisdiction. The focus is not there. The focus needs to be on the 31 outstanding outstanding supervisory findings and making sure that we have proper answers on those, not on climate risk or changes, but on what your actual job is. And so on that note, well, you mentioned earlier that the day that SVB failed, there were 31 supervisory findings that were outstanding. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so of those, my question is why your people didn't do more. It is my understanding they could have downgraded their supervisory ratings, which obviously would have resulted in more frequent supervision and exams, or they could have taken enforcement actions like prohibiting dividends to shareholders, requiring immediate capital increases, fines, other things like that, but they did neither. Is that correct?
The supervisors had downgraded the firm in the summer with respect to broad-based problems in governance and controls, risk management functions, to deficient 1, which means the firm is not well managed. And as a result of that, the firm was subject to a 4M limitation, which meant that it could no longer merge with or acquire non-banking entities. And the staff were also in the process of developing a detailed memorandum of understanding, which is the first level enforcement action after a deficient downgrade occurs. So the steps were in train. What the report found is that our supervisors were not moving fast enough with respect to those actions.
So they had the tools in their toolbox, but they weren't using them with the force that they could have.
Yes, I think it's fair to say that the tools were there.
The tools were there. They just they didn't use them with the force. I'm hoping moving forward, I don't think we need new tools. I just think to your earlier point about creating a culture where those tools are used, you can do that internally. That's a leadership issue. That's not something that we don't need more rules or regulations to do that. And I am almost out of time. Mr. Grutenberg, my question is for you. Do you agree that if Silicon Valley Bank was sold while it was still an open bank, it would have been better for the economy, the consumers, and other banks who have now had to foot the bill to replenish the diff?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, so did you have any interested parties with interest to purchase SVB the night before SVB failed?
I'm not aware of any, Senator. We weren't the primary regulator, so we wouldn't have been the ones necessarily contacted in regard to that.
Okay, but if there were interested parties and we find that there were, that certainly should have been done the night before versus afterwards, it would have saved us all $35 billion at this point.
If there were opportunities for an open institution solution, that would have been preferable.
Well, if we find that, I certainly hope that in the future, we make those types of choices instead of ones that ultimately cause institutions all over the country to have to pay. Thank you.